The cold evening wind rustled through the cemetery trees as an old man in a tailored black coat stood frozen in disbelief. Just a few feet away, a young girl, barely 20, knelt by his son's grave, crying uncontrollably, clutching a small, torn notebook against her chest. Her tears fell onto the marble nameplate that read, Ethan Raymond, beloved son, 1997 to 2022. And in that haunting silence, billionaire Charles Raymond whispered under his breath, "Who are you, and why are you crying for my son?" But he never imagined the truth that would follow, one that would change his life forever. Friends, before we dive deep into this emotional journey, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a reminder that love, compassion, and humanity are worth more than all the wealth in the world. Charles Raymond was the kind of man the world both admired and feared. A billionaire industrialist, owner of one of the largest construction empires in the country. His name opened doors, but his heart had been locked away long ago. After losing his wife to illness, Charles poured himself into work, building skyscrapers while his only son, Ethan, grew up feeling like a stranger in his own home. Ethan wasn't like his father. Where Charles saw profit, Ethan saw people. He volunteered at shelters, visited orphanages, and spent his weekends teaching poor children how to read. His father often scolded him for wasting time, but Ethan would always smile gently and say, "Dad, one day you'll understand, money can build houses, but only kindness builds homes." Then came that dreadful day 2 years ago, the accident that took Ethan's life. A speeding truck, a rain-slick road, and a shattered dream. The loss broke something deep inside Charles. The mansion felt emptier than ever. He stopped talking to people, stopped smiling, and only visited the cemetery once a month, bringing flowers to a grave that had taken away the last piece of his heart. But on this day, something unusual happened. When Charles arrived at the cemetery, he noticed a figure kneeling beside Ethan's grave. The girl's clothes were old and worn, her face pale with sorrow. She was murmuring softly, almost as if talking to Ethan himself. Charles approached her slowly, his shoes crunching over the gravel. The girl flinched and turned, startled. Her eyes were red, but in them was a pain even deeper than his own. "Who are you?" Charles asked sternly, though his voice trembled slightly. "Why are you crying at my son's grave?" The girl hesitated, clutching the notebook tighter. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. "I didn't mean to intrude. I come here sometimes to talk to him." Charles frowned. "You knew my son?" She nodded, tears spilling down again. "He was my friend, my only friend." Something inside Charles stirred, curiosity mixed with disbelief. He gestured toward the nearby bench. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. Her name was Lena. She had grown up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. Her father had died when she was little, and her mother worked long hours cleaning offices. Lena dreamed of becoming a teacher, but she could barely afford her school fees. One day, 2 years ago, she met Ethan by chance. He was distributing food with a volunteer group near the riverside slums. While others handed out boxes and left, Ethan stayed to talk, to listen. "He saw me sitting under a broken streetlight, trying to study," Lena said, her voice trembling. "He gave me his umbrella, then sat beside me in the rain. He said he believed I'd make a great teacher one day." Charles listened in stunned silence. She went on to describe how Ethan would visit her school secretly, pay her tuition, and encourage her to keep chasing her dream. He never told her who he really was, just that his name was Ethan. When Lena found out he had died, she was devastated. "I didn't even get to thank him," she sobbed. "So I come here every week, to talk to him. To tell him I'm still studying, that I won't give up like he told me not to." Charles's eyes welled up. His son, whom he thought wasted his time, had touched lives he never even knew about. "Do you have anything that belonged to him?" Charles asked, struggling to keep his composure. Lena opened her torn notebook and showed him a message written on the first page in neat handwriting. Never stop believing in yourself, Lena. Your story will inspire many. Ethan. The handwriting. The words. The compassion. It was unmistakably his son's. Charles's heart shattered all over again, but this time, it wasn't out of grief, it was pride and regret mixed together. From that day onward, Charles couldn't stop thinking about Lena. He began visiting the cemetery more often, and each time, Lena was there, sometimes praying, sometimes reading out loud, sometimes just sitting silently with the breeze. One evening, he offered her a ride home. She refused politely, embarrassed by her modest neighborhood, but he insisted. When they arrived, Charles was stunned by what he saw, a crumbling building, narrow alleys, and children playing barefoot. He saw in their eyes what Ethan must have seen every time he came here, a world forgotten by privilege. He asked her quietly, "Is this where my son used to come?" "Yes," Lena said softly. He said helping others made him feel closer to his mom. Charles didn't respond, but tears silently rolled down his cheeks. That night, he couldn't sleep. For the first time in years, he walked through his mansion and realized how empty it truly was, filled with gold, yet void of warmth. The next morning, Charles visited Lena's school. The roof leaked, the walls cracked, and children studied without books. The principal, an elderly woman, explained that Ethan had donated anonymously to keep the school open before his death. Charles stood there for a long time, then said, "From today, I'll continue what my son started." He donated funds to rebuild the entire school, but more than money, he spent time there, reading stories to the children, sponsoring scholarships, even planting trees in Ethan's name. The school was renamed the Ethan Raymond Learning Center. Word spread quickly, how a billionaire who once ignored the poor was now transforming their lives. But Charles didn't care about the publicity. All he cared about was honoring his son's legacy and the girl who had reminded him of what truly mattered. Months later, Lena graduated with top honors. On the day of the ceremony, she received an award for Excellence in Education, sponsored by the Raymond Foundation. She stood on stage, her voice trembling as she said, "I once thought kindness was only found in stories. But then I met Ethan. And through his father, I learned that kindness can be reborn, even from grief." The audience applauded. Charles, sitting in the front row, wiped his eyes discreetly. When she stepped down, he handed her a small envelope. Inside was a scholarship letter, funding her college education in full. She gasped, her hands trembling. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." Charles smiled softly. "Don't thank me. Thank Ethan. You kept his light alive when mine had gone out." Years passed. Lena became a teacher, fulfilling the dream Ethan once believed in. The school flourished, children from poor families gained opportunities, and Charles found peace he had never known. Every year on Ethan's death anniversary, he and Lena would visit the grave together, laying flowers and sharing stories of the lives Ethan had touched. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with golden hues, Charles said quietly, "You know, Lena, I used to think my son's life ended too soon. But now I realize, he's still living, through you, through these children, through every act of kindness." Lena smiled through tears. "He'd be proud of you, sir. He really would." Charles looked at the grave one last time, the wind carrying his whisper, "Rest easy, son. Your dream is safe now." Sometimes, it takes a stranger's tears to awaken the humanity within us. True wealth isn't measured in money or power, it's measured in love, compassion, and the lives we touch along the way.